I guess the first question for you, because you are going to talk to us about the challenges that lay ahead of the IASB. So the obvious question would be, what are those challenges that lay ahead? If you could tell us in a brief way for people who might not be experts in accounting.
Yes, well, there are some major ones, because now it is in the second year of its second decade, and it's looking ahead and has many challenges other than issuing standards and interpretations. One of them is knowing how to deal with the problem of the United States not willing to come on board. How do you manage that? Another question is, how do you deal with regulators around the world, each of which is independent in its own country, and trying to get them to be rigorous and proactive in requiring companies to comply? How do you deal with receiving comments from national standard setters around the world, all of you whose views are different because they come from different business cultures and different political cultures? How do you organize this? How do you analyze it? How do you satisfy readers of financial statements around the world that when a company says it is using international financial accounting standards, it really is using international financial accounting standards, a matter of what the company says and the auditor says? So these are some of the questions which they're facing. Historically, the trustees in the foundation overseeing the IASB have been inward-looking, mainly raising funds, appointing members of the board, overseeing the board in its due process, and protecting its independence. But now they are reaching out to regulators, to national standard setters, to companies overseas. And so they've entered a new phase now, and now it becomes important to try and handle these matters.
So linking back to some of the comments that we had last year, because this is a conference that we also had last year, I think one of the things that people were concerned about, particularly those who are not experts in accounting, is through the implementation of an international set of financial standards, what they aim to achieve was for everyone to have a high quality set of accounting standards. Is that a challenge that lays ahead of the IASB, to have high quality set of accounting standards, or have that challenge been already resolved, and do we have a set of accounting standards which are of high quality and equal quality to United States accounting standards?
Well, I think the SEC and many other observers believe that their standards have been of high quality, much more principles oriented with less detail than, let's say, the kind of accounting we see in the United States. So I think people are willing to accept that. But there was a rather interesting change made in its constitution in 2010, where they added the word accepted. So they must be accepted around the world, globally, high quality, accepted. This in effect says that if they are not widely accepted, it may not be feasible to issue them. So this is a new idea, I think, and not too much discussion has occurred about this. And for an American, it reminds me somewhat of the term generally accepted accounting principles, where we have the word accepted as well. So it's started very well, I think. The quality of the standards is high, but then there have been concerns about political influences, but also in the United States, not just at the international level. And there have been some criticisms in my country that the issuance of the standards by the IASB has been too influenced by politics. But they tend to forget that in the United States, we have had a great deal of political influence as well.
So the last question might be a bit unfair, but I was wondering, considering all your knowledge about how these processes have been developing, where do you see IFRS in 5 years' time? Will they be the single accounting set of accounting standards in the whole world, or do you think that is getting less and less likely?
Well, I think much depends on the Americans, not just because the Americans represent the largest capital market in the world, but because everybody is watching them. And if they are seen as not coming on board, other countries might lose interest, like Japan and even China, and perhaps India. And other countries may say, well, if the Americans do not think sufficiently highly of international financial reporting standards, we don't need to be quite as aggressive or proactive as we are. So that could cause what might be called an unraveling to some extent. And so I think the fact of the Americans coming on board is a very important signal to the rest of the world that the Americans have high respect, a sufficiently high respect of IFRS. But I think a big reason why the Americans have not come on board is not because of the IASB. It's because of the nature of the thinking in the United States, where Americans generally like other people to join their bandwagons. They do not like to join other people's bandwagons, even though they have supported the IASB for many years. So making that move is difficult for the Americans. But I think in the European Union, I think IFRS is going to continue to dominate the accounting scene. I think in many other countries that have gone so far, in South American countries, in Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, quite a few others, they will continue to be strong. Who wants to go back to the kind of accounting they had, which was very tax-oriented, for example, in the old days? Investors certainly don't want that. So yes, I think it will continue, but whether it will become truly global, covering all of the major capital markets that need to be covered, is the very difficult question to try to answer.
Okay, so thank you very much for
It's a pleasure to be
applying.
here.
Thank you.